Good afternoon, friends. Today is Wednesday, May 6th, the beautiful spring-like day of May. As we move through this fourth week of Easter, we continue to celebrate our Easter feast. And of course, during this month of May, the Church has us more than ever aware of, conscious of, dedicated to our relationship with the Blessed Mother. This is it's a deeply personal topic for me because I do have what I believe to be a very tender relationship with the Blessed Mother, and therefore it's something that's difficult to talk about. And also likewise, it comes at a tender time in my life. My own mother died on May 10th, which was the day before Mother's Day. And so in my spirituality, in my relating to the Blessed Mother as kind of that maternal face of God, if you will, or that one to whom I turn as I would turn to a loving mother. It really is the month of May when that is most deeply sharpened for me. I'm of a certain age. I'm 62 years old, and so I made my first communion in 1965, just at the time of the Second Vatican Council. And with regard to devotion to Mary and Marian theology, it was kind of an odd time, because I think in the 60s, with the Second Vatican Council, there was something of a reaction to what might have seemed to be an overemphasis on devotion to Mary and Marian practices and Marian theology in the 1950s. And so I didn't, certainly Mary was always a very much part of my growing up and the religious practice in my parish, which I'll talk a little bit about as a child. But going through my religious education as a child, I didn't hear a lot about Mary. Now, we might say that since then, because of our de-emphasis on Mary in those years, there's been a resurgence of devotion to Mary. Likewise, you know, I think in my growing up years, there was kind of a downplay of Eucharistic adoration for the same reason that during the 50s there may have been an overemphasis on that. And in any case, that's worthy of another discussion sometime. But all which means to say, I think there are some of us who may be somewhat a little self-conscious about our devotion to Mary, our devotion to the saints, because we hear echoes of others saying to us, or people, non-Catholics perhaps, or others who didn't understand, you worship Mary, or you idolize Mary, or you idolize saints, and we go directly to Jesus, and you go to Mary first, and all of that kind of rhetoric, which isn't enormously helpful. Suffice it to say that I think in our tradition, our tradition of saints and our communion with the saints, our companionship with the saints, and certainly our companionship, our relationship with Mary, the Mother of Jesus, is an absolute jewel for me in my religious practice, which only deepens my love for Jesus. I'll tell you, it was really my I'm going to get my dog. He's barking at my door. Live TV. Chicho. It's like being a mother having a dog, you see. I talked a bit about on another reflection that my 30-day retreat in 1991, that was another time when I really deepened, I think, my relationship with Mary. It was an Ignatian retreat, and so the Ignatian practice is a real use of the imagination in entering into the Gospels. For example, Ignatius has a step into the story, has us standing at the side of the road as Jesus is healing the blind man. He has us standing with the shepherds at the manger when Jesus is born. And so my director on that retreat, Sister Dorothy, get out of your head, into your heart, Sister Dorothy. She would have me in regular conversations with Mary. When I would find it hard to bring something to Jesus, she would say, "Go talk to Mary about this." You know? Or if I was finding Jesus a little standoffish or a little non-responsive, she'd say, "Talk to Mary about that. What does Mary think? What does Mary think? Does Mary think that Jesus is ignoring you? Does she think that he's having a bad day? Will she help you to understand that perhaps you're misinterpreting Jesus' response to you?" So it's using our imagination to be in conversation with the Gospels and with the saints, and in order to experience a spiritual truth and a reality beneath that imagination. Very rich time for me in developing that relationship, that conversation with Mary. Never as a substitute, of course, never as a substitute with one's relationship with the Lord, but always kind of enriching that family, that spiritual family that we have in being in relationship with Jesus. I've had two great pilgrimages in my life, and I've told you about some of this. I've shared some of this in homilies, but one was to the shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa, which was in 2011. I went to Poland for the first time in 2011 and made a pilgrimage there to see the shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa. It was very important to me because it was that icon of Our Lady of Czestochowa which hung in my parish church of St. Philip's as I was growing up. And now I'm very thrilled that it's here at Ascension. When St. Philip's closed in 2011, as you know, it merged into the Ascension family, and so that icon came to Ascension. In any case, as a kid, I would during recess, could sneak into church and light a candle in front of Our Lady of Czestochowa in a beautiful side chapel, which was created in her honor. My pastor at the time, Father Ladislas Sleds, had brought the icon from Poland. It had been touched to the original at Czestochowa. He had an enormous devotion to Mary, as many Poles do. He had credited her with helping him survive the worst of life in a concentration camp during the Second World War. And he said he'd always have fresh flowers at her shrine should he be able to make it out alive, and of course he did, and of course she did. So the place of that icon had a very special place at St. Philip's. But in any case, it's the image of Mary from my childhood. You will recall that she is sometimes called the Black Madonna. It has nothing to do with race, the pigmentation of her skin. It was simply because it's years in the original icon that soot and smoke had darkened her, and she became known as the Black Madonna. She also has 3 scars, I think, in her right cheek. Again, the result of another attack by, I believe, Hussites in the 17th century or something. So those slashes in her cheek were left there. But she was so honored in Czestochowa because Mary was credited with saving Poland from Swedish invaders, of all people, the Swedes, in 1655, halting their advance at the monastery gates. And so for all the Poles who I grew up with at St. Philip's, she was a very familiar companion to them. She really was the queen of Poland. But in any case, got a chance to see her at the Shrine of Czestochowa in 2011. It was an incredible experience just walking into the church at the first time, because there were hundreds of people. I'd never really been on a spiritual pilgrimage quite like this before. Been to lots of places of devotion, but the first time, I think, to a Marian shrine like this. So walked in, there were people, of course, crawling on their knees up toward the icon, like extremely elderly people, and people who were obviously in deep pain, doing this as a sacrifice of moving close to her, rosaries in their hands, weeping. The room was filled with emotion, singing these Polish Marian hymns, bringing whatever grief, sadness, passion to the Blessed Mother. I also recall, too, in the shrine there, walls filled with what are called votives. They're little images, silver images of crutches or broken legs or little hearts. Some image of what indeed Mary had saved them from. Made into a silver image to be placed upon her wall. They reminded me of little crosses in a way. It's the cross, which is an instrument of torture, which we wear and we raise triumphantly as a sign of victory, of Christ's victory over that death. And so these silver votives, once a person's deepest grief, became for them a sign of victory in Jesus Christ. I had a similar experience when I went to the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. That was in 2016 for the first time. The Basilica, if you can believe this, the capacity is about 10,000 people. They have mass every hour on the hour where people move in and move out, and so tens of thousands visiting that site every day. But likewise, people bringing in front of the tilma, the cloak of Saint Juan Diego, where Our Lady of Guadalupe left her image, bringing their passion, bringing their grief, bringing their sadness, their hungers, their losses, their broken relationships, whatever heartache they had, bringing it here and just dropping it off. See, this is the thing about Marian devotion for me. There's something about that feminine, maternal openness to grief, which so blesses a relationship with Mary, with the Blessed Mother. You know, I think my mother now has died. Her death is 17 years ago. That's hard for me to believe it's been that long, but I for anyone who's experienced the loss of a mother or a grandmother for that reason, or for that in the same way, you know, you've kind of lost a singular love in your life. Because moms and grandmas, love us in a way that no one else can. That despite themselves, even, I dare say, even in more difficult relationships, there is that connection that a mother cannot deny in terms of her closeness to a child, to her child. So I knew, soon after my mother's death, and she died rather suddenly. It wasn't an extended illness, thanks be to God for her. But in any case, I knew that I had lost someone who loved me in a way that no one else did or could. And she knew completely, she wasn't blind in any way. She knew that I was very difficult to love at some times, and she knew how the sausage was made, and yet she loved me. It's that kind of openness, I think, a spiritual openness that the place that Mary has in the place of our spirituality. Do we presume that Jesus has all of that? Of course. The most tender Lord, we can go to him with anything. But do I find myself, crying in Mary's lap at times, other than Jesus? Yeah, because she helps me to access a kind of honesty or openness or sincerity or authenticity that only a mother can. Whatever your relationship is with Mary, I would just give you the advice that Sister Dorothy gave me on my 30-day retreat, and that is, when there's a glitch in that relationship with Jesus, when the conversation breaks down, when you're not making the connection that you want to make, that you want to make, or that you desire to have, talk it through with Mary. You know, have her bring you Jesus. Have her, let her walk with you to him if that helps. If it's easier to approach him, not alone, but with her. You know, I dare say for those who may not have a relationship with Mary, it all sounds very strange. But I think if you've experienced, for one who's experienced that kind of companionship that she offers, it's a kind of richness in spiritual life that is another great gift of our tradition, another great gift of the Lord to us. I want to close with just a small paragraph from a poem to Our Lady by Henry Adams. It's a long poem, or I think it's called Prayer to Our Lady of Chartres in France, but I think it's just sweet in itself. He says, "Gracious Lady, for centuries I brought you all my cares and vexed you with the murmurs of a child. You heard the tedious burden of my prayers. You could not grant them, but at least you smiled." God bless you. We'll see you soon.